Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Going Rounds podcast. Thursday night, back at it again. And we got a big pay-per-view this weekend. UFC 295 coming in hot. We got the big boys fighting this weekend with two title fights. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm putting together some stuff. I'm hoping that everything works and hoping for some things to go down this weekend, but the fights should be great. I feel like even though there is some last minute changes, it's not very last minute. I guess a lot of times it's super last minute, but this time we've known for a little bit now that John Jones was out and Stipe wasn't going to fight anymore if it wasn't Jones. So we got a couple big names to take their places. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like it should be for the undisputed title, but, you know, the UFC does things to make sure that their viewership and events are as big as possible. So we're going to get into that here shortly. We have some other big fights announced just this past week. And then we've got some Gamebred Bareknuckle MMA. So few things to talk about, and then of course we got to recap last week's UFC event in Sao Paulo with Jailton Almeida versus Derek Lewis. So we'll get into that here pretty quick too. As for me, this week has been a little weird, but all in all, I guess not crazy bad. Stressful, I guess, is the word. But that's every goddamn week for me, it seems. So I don't know why I'm even acting like it's not. But, you know, the weeks keep pushing. We're getting close to these holidays. So things are going to get hectic. I mean, they're always hectic to a certain degree. But it seems like as soon as the holidays hit, it's crazy traffic out in the streets. The stores are crazy. You can't go anywhere because everyone's fucking losing their minds. And then, you know, people get emotional. People get moody. I'm moody all the time. I'm just kidding. Maybe not. Maybe I'm not kidding. I know I go up and down with my moods, but I do this so that I can sit here and release some emotions, have a drink, have fun. I'm passionate about MMA and I like doing my podcast, so this is a good time for me. And I stress all the way up until it's happening, and then I get going and I have fun. And it's like I turn everything else off and I'm just thinking about this, and I love it. It's a good escape for me, except for when things go wrong, because then I just freak out and stress. You would think I'd be better at handling stress these days, but the outcome is what, I guess, for me, is what I focus on. As long as everything turns out okay, I just have to forget about everything else. And I get embarrassed sometimes with the way I freak out and lose my temper or lose my patience. But I guess, I mean, that's everybody for the most part. It's just things get stressful, and it's tough to put that stress aside and forget about everything and start focusing on what you need to focus on. I think sometimes maybe I thrive in that stress, in that hectic bullshit, but it doesn't always apply. So I don't handle things the best all the time. But like I said, this is a passion of mine and I love it, and I like podcasting a lot. And I may not be the best at it, but I try to get better all the time. I feel like I've progressively gotten better and better here and there. My production quality's pretty good. You know, my audio quality's getting better. I got this new setup, new mics, everything. And I'm hoping that I get to test those out soon. It'll be cool. And I'm hoping that I can just ease into all this stuff and just get to that point where I was a little while ago, where besides technical difficulties that you never see coming, and the few little mistakes I make here and there, those are going to happen. It is what it is. But I'm hoping that I just get back to that point where I don't feel like I'm constantly worried about what's going to happen next. And that's the stressful part about getting new stuff and, with podcasting, technical stuff. It's like I'm pretty good with technical things. That's why I could put all this together. But because I don't just turn on a mic and start talking. I prepare and I get things ready visually, audio wise, mentally on my own personal level, and as far as the knowledge goes, I'm preparing from the time that I guess Sunday morning, I would say I start preparing for the next week's podcast, because I rewatch fights. I'm looking at things online. It's crazy. It's crazy. I put a lot of undue stress on myself and pressure, but I feel like if I don't do that, I'm not challenging myself. And I need that. I need to challenge myself. Everything can't be easy. And I have to remind myself of that all the time, because a lot of times I want to be comfortable. I want to be just not make everything easy, but I just want to have things run smooth. And it doesn't always work that way. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. So sometimes the challenge and the pressure and the stress is welcomed. I just might not know it in the moment. So I have to take a step back and I got to check myself. And this is why I try to hold myself accountable. And just talking about it like this for me is eye-opening. And for me to basically just say it out loud, it helps. And I know a lot of people don't have an outlet or don't choose to take the outlets that are provided to them because they're so introverted or just private or anything like that. And obviously this is far from private, but I just use it as a way to open my eyes to things, like I said, and hold myself accountable. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know why I went down this rabbit hole all of a sudden, but I guess part of it reminds me, because I was saying I'm passionate about all this, is, I saw my daughter post or put up a post on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, Tenant Trend. Follow her everywhere. She posts on Twitter or X and TikTok and Instagram, and sometimes on Facebook. She posts things a lot. She's been trying to stream more, and with all of the new drops for COD and Fortnite and stuff, she's been gaming a lot and streaming a lot, and I'm proud of her for getting back into it and doing it a little more often. I know life is hectic, and she's been trying to find time to do it, and she has lately. She's been immersing herself in it, and it's cool to see, and I'm glad and I'm happy for it, and I'm proud of her for everything that she does and sticking with it, because it's tough. It's tough, especially her being a female gamer who doesn't portray herself in ways that other female gamers do. She's there for the gaming, and that's what she's there to do. And it's commendable. I love to see it. And she posted a little something today talking about just the fact that she's happy she's stuck with it, and she's a work in progress and all this stuff. And I was just proud to hear her say it. And I like to make sure that I just, I guess, see those things, you know what I mean? Like really see them, because I know sometimes I feel like things that I do go unseen or overlooked or something. And it's not that I need some pat on the back, but everybody wants one every now and again, right? Everybody needs that confirmation that what they're doing is not for nothing. And so, for Trin, I love that she's continuing to do it and progressing. And, it's a slow burn on both our sides, but it's fun. We're passionate about what we do. And I love to see her continuing on, and I try to continue as well and make sure that we keep each other going and back each other up. So cheers, Trin. And everybody out there, I appreciate the support and for listening to me rant on about things sometimes. But back to the show and back to some MMA, because that's what we're here to do. But I like to get into other little things here and there too, as you could tell. So let's see. Where are we going to start today? Well, obviously I know, because I prepped everything. And I like to keep everything in order. So that way I know what I'm doing. But curveballs get thrown at me sometimes, and that's okay. So part of those curveballs is the live chat. So if you're here and watching live with me right now, don't forget to check in on the live chat, say what's up, ask a question, comment, whatever you want to do. Keep it cool. I always stop and acknowledge the chat as I can and answer any questions or, you know, whatever's going on, I'll interact. So if you're here and watching live, do that. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe, share with a friend, tell somebody about the pod, hopefully help me keep growing, and follow my social media going on down there. Going Rounds podcast everywhere except for X. It's Going Rounds pod, and it'll be at the bottom of the screen throughout the show. So if you want to check it out, please do so. And don't forget to like my pages everywhere, and hopefully you like the content. So let's keep it going. Let's keep it moving. Let's get into it. We'll get started with some Gamebred Bareknuckle MMA. So if you haven't heard about this, obviously, you know, Gamebred, who is Jorge Masvidal, has been doing different events with bare knuckle boxing, bare knuckle MMA. I believe he has a regular MMA portion of his organization, but it's all under the Gamebred title and promotion. So it's his own promotion, and he gets all the fighters out there, man. Like everybody who is not in the UFC. He's got bare knuckle boxers from BKFC that have come over, ex-UFC fighters, ex-Bellator fighters, everybody from all realms of combat sports. So, I mean, it's pretty fun. Bare knuckle MMA, if anybody knows or talks, or not talks to, obviously, but listens to the Joe Rogan Experience on his podcast, he's talked about it before, that he believes that bare knuckle is the way to go for MMA because the 4-ounce gloves gives a certain comfortability, and which makes things a little different. And he wants to see a lot of the raw, like natural ways of fighting, and he thinks that, you know, there shouldn't even be a cage or a ring. He feels like it should be like a football field or just an open space where the fights can be had, as well as bare knuckle, because he thinks that's the most natural way to do it. And, you know, a lot of people have come around and talked about how he's crazy and it's dangerous and barbaric and blah, 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 all that bullshit. But I tend to agree to a certain extent. I feel like the 4-ounce gloves help a bit with some of the striking and grappling and stuff. You know, it's almost like being bare knuckle, but apparently being a 4-ounce glove with that little bit of padding and the way that the hands are wrapped underneath and all that, it's you know, it still is some kind of a cushion there that people take advantage of, and people will throw punches harder because they know they're protected with the wraps, they're protected with the gloves and all that. So either way, we've had plenty of fantastic fights in UFC and MMA overall with the rule set that it's been, you know, and I guess with the equipment that's been used, which is basically the gloves. So ever since the UFC has evolved into what it is now, you know, when it first started, there was bare knuckle. People were wearing wrestling shoes or whatever shoes, and wearing like gi pants or stuff like that. Like Art Jimerson, I think his name was, wore one boxing glove. So that's just how it worked. So the UFC and MMA is a whole different story these days, but it feels like we're reverting back a little bit and making it interesting with bare knuckle MMA and bare knuckle boxing. It's been entertaining. It's lasted longer than I thought, and with somebody like Jorge Masvidal behind something like bare knuckle MMA, it's bound to stick around for a while. And you know, Masvidal does a good job. He's got a good team because they've been making it work and keeping it going. So it's interesting. And, you know, I've watched a little bit of it here and there. I don't watch it like I watch the UFC, but it's fun. And this is a damn good matchup going on here in the main event. Roy Big Country Nelson versus Ellen Belcher, both former UFC fighters, both former MMA, regular traditional MMA fighters. We know Roy Nelson from season 10 of The Ultimate Fighter. There was all kinds of stars that came out of that season, as well as having Rampage Jackson and Rashad Evans being the coaches of that season. And I know season 10 well, because I do listen to Brendan Schaub's podcasts overall, and he's talked about it for years. And he was part of season 10, and I do remember him from that season and before he even started podcasting. So season 10 is a pretty notable season, along with, like, I think it might have been season 5 with Nate Diaz and Gray Maynard and all these other guys that came out of those big seasons. But anyway, down a rabbit hole I go again, or on a tangent, I should say. But Ellen Belcher was around in the UFC for a long time too, and he was, a pretty good fighter. He always fought at the lower weights, like I think middleweight and welterweight. I think he fought even as low as welterweight, and now he's up at heavyweight, and he's looking juicy. This fool is fucking ripped and thick. So I don't know that they do any official testing in Gamebred Bareknuckle MMA, but Ellen Belcher looks like he doubled his size in muscle mass and everything else. He doesn't even look like the same guy, but this should be interesting and fun. I mean, overall records, they both have a lot of fights under their belts. Big Country is 23-9, and Ellen Belcher is 18-8, and I believe Roy Nelson has had one fight in bare knuckle MMA and got the win there. So looks like everything is pretty much the same. Belcher's a little bit taller. There's no weight listed for Belcher, so that's interesting, but Roy Nelson is showing 264, and they got similar reaches. I think Belcher's got like 2-inch reach on him. But yeah, I think this should be fun and interesting, especially to see Belcher fighting up at that higher weight against somebody like Roy Nelson, who we all know what kind of a record or what kind of a career Roy Nelson had in the UFC, and he was dominant. And he went away for a long time, and now he's back doing bare knuckle MMA. Sounds like it's right up his alley, and yeah, we'll see what kind of fight this has in for it. Let's see what else we got here. Alex Nicholson versus Prince McLean, I think, which that's weird. I don't see that on there. But we got Jason Knight versus Randy Costa. Jason Knight also being a former UFC fighter as well. He was in that latest episode, I think. Yeah, he was on the latest episode or latest season of The Ultimate Fighter. So that was interesting to see him on that as well. He's got a lot of scar tissue on his face. I believe he's done BKFC as well. So this should be interesting watching him in bare knuckle MMA. And he's got a substantial amount of fights over his opponent, Randy Costa. Jason Knight is 22-7 overall, and Costa is 7-4. Everything else is pretty much similar. But yeah, then we got Chase Sherman versus Carl Sumanitafa. Fuck if I know how to say that dude's name. But Chase Sherman, the Vanilla Gorilla, funny ass nickname, former UFC fighter as well, 16-12. Oof, that's a tough record, but not as tough as Carl, however you say his name, 13-14 overall. But this is a heavyweight bout. Let's see who else we got. Curtis Millender, I believe, fought in the UFC as well, versus Joel Bauman. Millender's 21-9. Bauman is 9-3. And then let's see if we got any other. Joshua Weems, I believe, was in the UFC previously as well, versus Junior Maranao. That is a catchweight bout at 140. Francisco Trinaldo, former UFC fighter, versus Sasha Palatnikov. That's a welterweight bout. And oh shit, Hector Lombard versus Chris Sarro. So this Chris Sarro guy is 1-0 against a fucking grizzled vet like Hector fucking Lombard. 34-10-1. This is a weird fucking matchup, and I want to know where Sarro is from, because he's 1-0 is what it says his record is. I don't know. That's tough. That's kind of crazy. Let's see who else. James Freeman. That sounds familiar. Don't know where he's from though. And that's it. Those are the only other fights I know. But this should be interesting. Could be fun. So check it out if you want to watch. Let's see if it tells me how. Friday, November 10th. So that'd be tomorrow. It's taking place in Biloxi, Mississippi. I assume that's because it is bare knuckle MMA, and it's probably only sanctioned in certain areas. But this event will be streamed live and free on our YouTube channel. So basically, it's live and free on the Gamebred Bareknuckle MMA YouTube channel. So if you're wanting to check it out, it's free. Check it out right here on YouTube. Go to their YouTube channel, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you'll know when it starts, I'd assume. So that's pretty cool. You get the whole thing for free. Don't even have to fight to figure out where to watch it. It's right here on YouTube tomorrow night. And it says it starts at... Oh shit, I don't see a time. Let me see if I can find it. Click here. Okay. Well, that's cool. I don't see a time. But I'm sure you can find it. So it's on YouTube. Easy enough, right? So let's move on to the announced fights that happened this past week. We had Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis for the middleweight title fight Saturday, January 20th in Toronto, UFC 297. Now, look at that number. We got 295 this weekend. We got 296 next month, which is going to be a big card. And now we've got January set up with a main event for the middleweight title with Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. As we all know, Israel Adesanya basically is going on a hiatus. He said he doesn't want to fight till like 2027 or some shit like that. I highly doubt he's going to be out that long. But with that being said, obviously he's not fighting in the UFC for a while or anywhere else. So Sean Strickland needed an opponent and wants to get back in there to fight. But he's not happy about the fact that it's in Toronto. Go figure, Mr. Patriotic, Mr. America guy. Nothing wrong with it except for he's a real dick when it comes to everything else. I don't know why it has to be that way. I mean, at least it's Canada, bro. They're not sending you to China. So calm the fuck down. But he's fighting Dricus du Plessis, who everyone was thinking might not get a title shot, even though he kind of deserves one, because he turned down the fight with Israel, which got Strickland the belt. So I guess the least Strickland could do is give du Plessis the title match and give him a chance to possibly take that title. I'm not sure about this fight. The way Strickland looked in the fight against Izzy, it was more impressive than I expected, and he did well. So, and is he gonna have a new fire under his ass now that he has the belt, or is he gonna let it get to his head and falter on that? I don't know. But DDP looked really good against Robert Whittaker in that fight back in July when they fought during International Fight Week. So if he comes out looking like that fighter, I think Strickland's got a whole different kind of fight in his hands. And DDP is a different type of and style of fighter than Izzy was or is. So it should be interesting. I'll be waiting to, check out a little more on that matchup, coming up. But there's a few more fights before that. So we'll wait on that one. And let's move on to the next one announced. That is Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria, who I know a couple people. Topuria is that are fans of Topuria, so they should be happy about that. Frankie, if you're out there, not Cellular, but my dad's buddy Frankie that I've known for a long time. He's a big Topuria fan, so your boy got his title shot. So here we go in February. I know Volkanovski was out there asking for a fight as quickly as possible. A lot of people were thinking that it was going to happen in January, but they pushed it a little bit, and then it's happening in February. So Volk gets an extra month of training, an extra month of recovery time, and hopefully it all works out for him. Unfortunately for everyone who's a Topuria fan, I'm still on Volkanovski's side here. I feel like he is definitely gonna have something to prove after that loss against Makhachev for the second time that he just went through not too long ago. And I feel like he's going to go down to his weight class and make everyone suffer. So either that or that loss will be in his head so bad that he drops the title, which would be sad. But I do like Topuria. I do think he's a great fighter. And he put out a banger of a promotion for the fight when it got announced. It's a very simple video, but it has a lot of meaning in it. And it's a great production for a video. So go check that out on social media. I saw it on Instagram. I'm sure you can find it anywhere. But yeah, that's UFC 298. Again, pay attention to those numbers because we're just rolling right along. UFC 300 is right around the corner. This is happening February 17th. I don't think they have a location or anything like that yet, but it is happening in February. Moving on to the last one, the final announcement: Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera, part 2, happening in March. So that will be UFC 299, which means UFC 300 will take place in April, unless something crazy happens. I don't know what could happen, but you know, this happening in March means 300 is going to happen in April, which is kind of crazy. We're only a few months away. And with all of these fights announced and none of them being Conor McGregor, I would assume that it's safe to say he's going to be probably the main event for UFC 300. I don't know that I feel like that is something that he should have at the moment, but And are they going to keep Michael Chandler? Like, that's the other thing. You never know what the UFC is going to pull out. You never know what's going to happen between now and then. I mean, obviously we're months away from that. So, it's tough. But it could be interesting, and I can almost guarantee that they are going to put Conor on that card. I would be surprised if they didn't make him the main event for some reason, but I can almost guarantee he's going to be the main event. And whether he's fighting Chandler or not, that's a toss-up, but that is supposed to be the fight that should be the fight, is against Michael Chandler. But this one should be interesting as well, because Chito Vera actually beat Sugar Sean O'Malley previously. Now Sean got kicked in that nerve in his calf that gives you dead foot or drop foot, whatever they call it. So basically he was like, he claims that that's why he lost, and he doesn't even acknowledge the fact that he lost. So that's what's interesting too. He still says he's an undefeated fighter, but that is his only defeat in the UFC. So we'll see what happens now that he has the title. I feel like they're both better fighters for the most part, but I'm not happy with Chito's last fight against Sandhagen, I believe. And he's got to come out with more than that to beat Sean O'Malley. Sandhagen was hurt as well, so I feel like it would have been a different fight had he not gotten hurt in that first round. But Chito gets his title shot. I feel like he's been waiting for it for a while, so this should be interesting. I'm not really sure who to root for here. Honestly, I like both of them a lot, so I'll wait. I'll wait and see what happens in the lead up. And that's it for the big announcements this week. So we got the first 3 months of the year out of the way. We know what the main events are. We'll see what happens when it comes to injuries or anything like that. Hopefully the injury bug doesn't strike like it has in these past few months of this year. And let's hope that this December card goes off without a hitch as well, because it's going to be a banger. And I'm looking forward to it. So I'm hoping that nothing happens to that main event or that entire card at all. Let's just have a good December and no more injuries like it has been over the past few months. So yeah, that's about it for combat sports news, except for a quick announcement. And there's that music because it's for the Watch Party podcast happening Saturday, November 11th, this Saturday. Main card starts at 8 p.m. Arizona time. Account for whatever time zone you're in, but come here and join us for a Watch Party podcast. As you all know, or if you don't know, I cannot show the fights on the podcast, but I will be in studio. As long as nothing changes and nothing happens, I will have a guest or two here with me as well. Hopefully I get to try out this whole new setup, make sure that it goes off better than it did. I don't know that I'm going to put the pressure on myself to have any outside guests, but for now, I'm thinking I'm going to have one, maybe two guests here in studio. Either way, come here, same channel, Going Rounds Podcast YouTube channel, 8 p.m. Saturday. As soon as the main event starts, the podcast will start, and we will have oh my gosh, I just totally lost track. We will be on for the main event. For the main card for UFC 295. 2 titles on the line: Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira, and Sergei Pavlovich versus Tommy Aspinall. 2 titles on the line. Should be fun. And now I'm pretty excited and I can't wait. I wasn't sure if I was going to do one, but we're doing it. So hopefully everything works out, and hopefully everything is good and ready, and I don't have anything happen like last time. So come check it out. Tell somebody. And yeah, share the news, and join us on Saturday for UFC 295 Watch Party podcast right here. Now let's get into a recap of last week's UFC event. Oh my goodness. I knew it was going to happen, and that's because I threw this in at the last minute. But that's okay, because I'm going to fix it right now. Here we go. There it is. UFC Sao Paolo, Jailton Almeida versus Derek Lewis. I wasn't too happy with the way that this ended. The main event was a little lackluster considering they're 2 heavyweights. Derek Lewis is usually exciting, and a lot of times it's a very fast fight. But fighting somebody with the talent and skill set that Jailton Almeida has, it's tough. I feel like it could have been better, but it also wasn't as bad as like Lewis versus Ngannou, because that was tough. And there was not a lot of action going on there. This one wasn't far from that as well, but it also had its moments, I guess. So there's not much else you can say besides that. Let's see what's happening here. I got things like just being slow. All right, so let's start off with a little bit further down the line. First fight of the night was Mark Diakase versus Kiyu Fernandez. Mark Diakase gets the win by split decision. Angela Hill versus Denise Gomes. Angela Hill got that win as well by unanimous decision. So yeah, I didn't hear a whole lot about these fights in the lower portion of this card, so I didn't get to watch all the way through. But you know, it was an okay card. Nothing outrageous, I guess, for the most part. Vitor Petrino got a nice KO win over Modestas Bukauskas in the second round. That was a big punch landed by Petrino. Took out Bukauskas, and he gets that win. And then you had Elizu Zaleski dos Santos versus Renat Fakhretdinov. That was a majority draw decision, so they went to a draw. That was, I don't know, man. There's some weird fights happening lately, and this one had a few weird fights as well. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't get to watch everything, so it is what it is. You know, the lower card wasn't as exciting as I was hoping. I mean, we had a draw, one KO, one TKO, and 2 decisions. So sometimes you could tell just by the outcome of the fights as to how the fights went. So those didn't feel like they were much to have missed, I guess. But getting to the main card, Elvis Brenner versus Kenan Krzyzewski. Elvis Brenner gets the win by KO in the first round with a big punch against Krzyzewski. And yeah, he pretty much flattened him. It was a weird punch that he caught him with. It's in certain angles, you couldn't even tell that he punched him. Like that big punch you saw before was not the punch that knocked him down and put him out. It was actually like a weird grazing shot in the middle of like an exchange. So it was kind of crazy. I had to watch it a few different times. Luckily, they showed a couple different angles, but the big punch was not, it was not a big, gigantic, crazy, dramatic punch that knocked him out. It was kind of a weird, quick shot that just, I think it was like behind the ear or something, and it just took him out. And he wound up flat, face down, and out cold. So Brenner with that pretty exciting win right there. Because I started watching this and I was just like, what the fuck just happened? This is a little weird. But it definitely it was definitely interesting, and it happened fast. So I mean, it was 4 minutes into the first round. So, but I mean, it was a very fast knockout, and you just weren't sure what happened. But yeah, moving on, we had Kyle Borhalio versus Abusupian Magomedov. Fucking tough ass names to say here, but Kyle has been pretty impressive in his past few fights, and you know, he just looks kind of crazy. He's got just I don't know, it's just like a really weird look to him, especially with the neck tats. He's got the crazy eyes kind of, and I don't know, he's got a little bit of style, I guess. So, but his tattoos, I guess, do it and give him that crazy look. But yeah, Kyle gets the win by unanimous decision. It was a pretty fun fight. I mean, it wasn't horribly like slow or boring. I was happy to see Kyle get the win. I mean, I like his fighting style. He seems like a fun guy. He seems interesting, and if he keeps up going on the path that he's been on, I feel like we're going to see a lot more of him. He's 15-1 overall. He's got the style, he's got the kind of swagger, and he's got a great fighting style as well. So this makes him, he's coming from Dana White's Contender Series back in 2021. He's got 5 he's 5-0 in the UFC, and he's 15-1 overall. So that's a good guy to bet on, depending on his opponent. And Abusupian Magomedov, I hadn't really heard of him, but he's got a lot of fights. 25-6 overall with 1 draw. but he was coming off a loss to Sean Strickland. Sean got him by TKO in the second round, which was the last fight he had before he fought Izzy. That was July of this year. Yeah. So before that, he had one win in the UFC. So he was 1-1 coming into this fight, and now he's 1-2 in the UFC. So he's got some ground to make up. A boost. Not a bad fighter, but nothing crazy. Kyle Baralho gets the win there. Moving on to that co-main, we had Rodrigo Nascimento versus Dontel Mays, and this also went to a unanimous decision with Nascimento getting the win. These guys were throwing though it was a back and forth fight for the most part, but Nascimento gets the win. He's 11-1 overall. This makes for his third win in a row in the UFC. Before that, he had a no contest and a loss. This is the second time he's fought Dontel Mays actually, and he beat him by submission, rear naked choke in the second round of the last fight in 2020 that they had. And now they fought again, and he gets a unanimous decision win. So, yeah, but I mean, as you can tell, they were exchanging pretty big guys, heavyweights. But yeah, Nascimento with the win, 11-1 overall. Shit, it's another guy to look out. When you start getting these guys with these numbers on their records, when they only have like no losses or 1 or 2 losses, it's like you're gonna get a decent fight out of them. They're gonna try to do their best to keep that record. Dontel Mays is 10-6, and he was coming off a win over Andre Arlovsky back in June. So that I'm sure he was going to get a nice winning streak, but Nascimento put the kibosh on that one. So now we move to a pretty crazy fight. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that was a co-main. This was actually the co-main or the second to the last, whatever you want to call it. Most of the time they call it the co-main event or whatever. Usually that's meant for the bigger fights. This was just the last fight before the main, whatever you want to call it. But we had Nicholas Dalby versus Gabriel Bonfim. Bonfim's brother was supposed to fight, but his fight got canceled, and I don't recall why. But Bonfim was undefeated up until this fight. He is now 15-1, but he was on a nice winning streak. He was 2-0 in the UFC, coming from Dana White's Contender Series, looking like a world beater. Everyone was high on this guy, and Nicholas Dalby is kind of one of those guys that can get wins, but sometimes he falters. But he was on a 3 fight win streak before this fight, and he makes it 4 with this one. Gets the win by TKO in the second round. I didn't get to watch all of this fight, but it looked like he was losing up until the point where he wasn't, and Bonfim was looking good in the fight. And Nicholas Dalby just came back with some knees and punches and winds up getting the win over Bonfim and killing that undefeated record of his. So we'll see how Bonfim bounces back, because sometimes those guys that are undefeated just can't get it out of their head, and they'll drop another 1 or 2 fights before they get back on track. But Bonfim looks like one of those guys that seems to be pretty straight with his with the way he fights and his regimen of training and whatnot. So I'm sure he'll bounce back, but it was nice to see Dalby get that win. Now like I said, he is on a 4 fight win streak, 23-4 overall. His last loss being in 2021 versus Tim Means, who, that's a tough opponent. So, but he's got a couple decent wins. Warley Alves, Muslim Salikov were the last 2 wins. Now Gabriel Bonfim. So he beat Daniel Rodriguez in 2020 as well. Yeah, so Dalby's somebody to look out for sure. That was a good win for him and a pretty decent fight overall. As you can see, he was a little beat up. Like I said, he was pretty much losing the fight until all of a sudden he wasn't. And then he gets that TKO win in the second round. Now to the main event, the unfortunate main event, because I mean, it may look like there was some action, and of course there was, because you're always going to get big punches. You're always going to get a fight out of Derek Lewis for the most part if he's not hurt, and if he even has a chance to let those hands go a little bit, it's going to be fun and it's going to be interesting. But everyone knows that his grappling and wrestling is not really up to par with the upper echelon of the division. And unfortunately, he just couldn't hang with Jailton Almeida. But, you know, he put up a damn good fight. You know, it looks here like it's just kind of a grazing shot, but you don't even want to get that grazing shot landed on you by Derek Lewis with those big hands, those heavy punches. But Jailton Almeida was pretty impressive with his wrestling and grappling. You know, he picked, as you can see here, he picked up big ass Derek Lewis and slammed him to the ground. And for the most part, throughout the entire fucking fight, which I heard something like it was 12-1 odds that this fight would go to distance. And whoever the fuck bet on that, I hope bet a decent amount of money, because they won a big amount of money if they bet on this fight going the distance. 12-1 odds, that's pretty damn good. Because, you know, of course, Derek Lewis is either going to get finished early or he's going to finish somebody early. It's never going to go all 5 rounds unless he's in a fight like with Ngannou, which is boring and uneventful. And this one was along those lines as well, except there was a little bit more action. And Derek Lewis was pretty impressive with his submission defense. I mean, he got mounted a lot. He spent a lot of time on the ground in this position right here with his hands up trying to defend, but flat on his back, no movement. He's known for getting taken down and getting, you know, kind of dominated on the ground until all of a sudden he's up. He just, like a zombie coming out of the ground, just stands up out of nowhere, even when he's mounted, even when he's in a very bad position. No matter what, he tends to get up. And he tried, and he was successful a couple times with Almeida, but not in the ways that he was before, where it looked super effortless. This time he had to put a lot of effort into it. But he got himself out of some really bad positions, and it was pretty impressive. Like, he did wind up showing a little bit of takedown defense after a while. And he showed a little more than he has in the past when it comes to defending submissions and takedowns and whatnot. But like I said, for the most part, he spent a lot of time on his back. Some takedown defense, and anytime he had a chance, he was sneaking a big shot in there, but he did miss a lot, unfortunately, and that takes a lot out of a fighter when they're taking big swings and missing. So he did look like he was in better shape. I mean, it didn't look like he was sucking air as much as usual. He didn't quit, and a lot of times you see Derek Lewis quit, so that's something that it seems to be quite a bit of an improvement for him, because when he's in these precarious positions and in this bad spot in a fight, he tends to just kind of let it go and give up, and he gets submitted, or he, you know, like something of that sort, or, you know, he gets TKO'd because he's not defending because he's tired. It seemed like he was in better condition, had a little bit better cardio. He just needs to work on that takedown defense and work on his grappling a little more. Maybe work some offensive grappling so that he's not always having to just defend. But either way, Derek Lewis is impressive for this one. You know, at least it wasn't a total loss for him, even though he did lose the fight. Wound up losing by unanimous decision, and it was obvious, but, you know, he did get on top and he did rain down some punches like he usually does, but he just couldn't land as cleanly as he normally does. Almeida had good defense, and he got out of all the bad positions he was in. And he had good head movement. I mean, for the most part, you know, he was on the ground and Lewis is ground and pounding and he's covering up and he's, you know, he kept moving instead of saying, you know, turtled up or shrimped up. You know, he was moving around, he was active on his back, and he was constantly finding ways to get out and stand up or put, you know, Lewis in positions where he couldn't rain those big heavy punches down. But like I said, you know, Lewis was throwing those big punches and you would think that one of them landing would end this fight, and it didn't. I don't know that he landed one clear flush punch on Almeida, but he definitely tried. But it took a lot out of him, winging these big punches. You know, he's got that nasty uppercut that he throws when he's on the inside and someone puts their head down and he connects, you know, and it usually will knock somebody out, and he just couldn't seem to land that punch in the way that he normally does. So Almeida took advantage and, you know, got the double leg, took him down over and over and over again, got in the dominant positions, and also, you know, put some ground and pound on Derek. But Derek was moving as well. He kept his hands busy, kept the hand fighting going, and Almeida just couldn't put him away. But in the end, he still got the win by unanimous decision over Derek Lewis, unfortunately. So after that very impressive first round finish that Lewis had in his last fight, he now is back in the losing column, unfortunately. He had that very fast win 33 seconds into the first round over Marcos Rogerio de Lima back in July. And that was a fun one. You know, he took off his shorts and ran around. It's always fun when Derek Lewis wins, but you know, this wasn't a horrible loss for him. He showed some improvement. If you've ever watched him fight before, like I said, it just sucks to see him get the loss, and unfortunate that he couldn't make something better of his fight against Almeida. But Almeida is a beast, and he is 20-2 overall, and I believe he's undefeated in the UFC. He's also a Contender Series alum from 2021, and he's 6-0 in the UFC now, with wins over Parker Porter and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. So, I mean, he's got some decent names under his belt, now adding Derek Lewis to that as well. So Jailton Almeida is the real deal. He's a great submission artist. He's got quite a few submissions on his record, couple TKOs. Everything is a finish, except for this fight was a decision. Usually he finishes the fight regardless of what round. So, you know, this could have been fireworks, but it was a bit more of a, I guess, strategic fight in a sense, but a little bit sloppy as well. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I'm sad Derek Lewis lost. I respect Almeida. I just don't know him that well, and we all have an affinity for Derek Lewis and the way that he fights and how funny he is and the character he is, and when he wins, it's always fun afterwards. So sucks to see him lose, but that's the game and that's what happens. So that wraps it up for UFC Sao Paulo. Let's get into this pay-per-view this weekend. UFC 295 taking place in Madison Square Garden in New York City. This should be a fun one. Every November they do the Madison Square Garden event, and it's, always headlined by big fights, big names, always titles, of course. But it was official. Initially supposed to be the Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic fight for the heavyweight title. Being that Jon Jones just beat Cyril Gane not too long ago for the heavyweight title for his first title defense, was gonna fight a legend in Stipe Miocic, one of the most decorated heavyweights of all time, who hasn't fought in a few years, by the way. But we didn't get to see a whole lot of Jon Jones in that fight against Cyril Gane because he just overwhelmed Gane and put him down, and choked him out quickly, and Gon had that look of disbelief in his face. Like, what the fuck just happened? I just got hit by a truck and I don't know why. But yeah, so we didn't get to see a whole lot of Jon Jones in the heavyweight division. And then the unfortunate injury of tearing his pec, or his, I think it was his pec, whatever it was, tore ligaments and whatnot, tore off the bone or some shit. I don't even know. It was sounding like a crazy injury though, and it's rather unfortunate because we were going to see one of the fights we've all wanted to see for a long time, especially with Jon Jones officially being in the heavyweight division and having a win under his belt already and being the champ. He came in one fight in the heavyweight division and wins and gets that title. I mean, that's fucking exciting, and we all know that Jon Jones is on his way out. He's talked about it over and over again. He takes a lot of time in between fights, and Stipe has done the same. He hasn't been the same since he fought Ngannou and lost, and he's just taken lots of time off. He's taken lots of damage throughout his career, lots of big fights, and lots of title defenses, but it seems like now he's wrapped up in being a full-time firefighter, which he's always been a firefighter, but now he's like all in full time. So it's tough, and it sucks to see that Stipe not be able to get that fight. And apparently he didn't want to fight anybody but Jon Jones, but then he's also saying that he didn't even get asked to be involved in the interim fight, which is what is happening between Jiri Prochazka versus Sergei Pavlovich versus Tom Aspinall. It's an interim heavyweight title fight, but I mean, let's be real here. The talk has always been about this fight with Jon Jones and Stipe was that both of them were set to retire after that fight. Now, Jon Jones was a little less official, but Stipe is kind of out there basically saying, that's it. That's going to be it for me. But you never know. I mean, that's rumors are rumors. Stipe hasn't said it completely outright, but he's insinuated that that's what's going to happen. Everyone was ready and willing to accept the fact that that's what was going to happen. Stipe was definitely going to retire, win or lose, and Jon Jones was almost more than 50% a definite for retiring as well. So now we have to wait because, the injury bug hits again. And, that's how all these fights that's how all these fights have materialized. This fight between Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira, that division, the light heavyweight division, has been a fucking mess since Jon Jones left. Glover had it, Jiri had it, Jamal Hill had it. Jiri got hurt, Jamal Hill got hurt. Yuri's back. Glover lost it to Jiri, right? Yeah. Fuck, I'm getting lost now. In between everything, we had the Blachowicz versus Makhachev goddamn, who was it? I don't even remember who it was. Jan Blachowicz against Magomedov. There was that draw in the middle of everything, which then turned into Glover versus Jamal, and then Jamal Hill got the win over Glover and was a champ, and then was supposed to defend against more than likely Jiri because Jiri was on his way back already, and then Jamal gets fucking hurt. Achilles tendon ruptured, and then has to vacate the belt as well. So, the injury bug has been crazy when it comes to the light heavyweight division, and the title changes are just insane and hard to keep up with. So now that we've gone over all that, that's the lead up to what's happening Saturday, November 11th, this Saturday. Sergei Pavlovich versus Tommy Aspinall for the interim heavyweight title, and Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira for the undisputed light heavyweight championship. Now, Alex Pereira coming in and fighting for his second title, even though he's only had like 4 or 5 fights in the UFC, is fucking insane. We'll get into that here in a couple minutes. But let's look at the lower portion of this card, because there is a few pretty good fights down there. Now, the card's going to start off with Dennis Bazooka versus Jamal Emmers. Dennis Bazooka is a Sarah Longo fighter. So, you know, he's in the camp with like Aljamain Sterling, Merab Dvalishvili, you know, everyone else in that camp. And he's a pretty good up and comer. I believe he's had he's only had 1 fight in the UFC, which he lost a unanimous decision, but he's looking to come back and really prove himself in the UFC. I've heard nothing but good things about him, and it sounds like he's just basically had some bad luck in that first fight. There's a lot of stuff surrounding that fight. I think it was a late replacement fight, so he didn't have much of a camp to prepare or whatnot. But, you know, that kind of shit happens. He's fighting Jamal Emmers, 19-7 overall, coming off a loss to Jack Jenkins back in June. Let's see, he's got win-loss. I mean, that's the way his UFC career is gone. He lost his debut against Giga Chikadze. Then he got a win. Then he got a loss against Pat Sabatini, who's fighting on this card as well. Then he got a win. And then he got a loss again. So if he sticks on that pattern, he's due for a win. But we'll see, because Bazooka's got a lot of steam in that engine, and he's ready to come out and prove himself. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see, Jared Gordon versus Marco Madsen. That should be a pretty damn good fight, actually, because Jared Gordon is a good fighter. We've seen him against Paddy Pimblett, who he lost to, but we all know he actually won that fight. And then he had that no contest versus Bobby Green, where he got knocked out, but it was an accidental clash of heads. So I mean, it's like a headbutt knockout. That's pretty crazy. And Bobby Green followed up with a punch still, I believe. And Jared Gordon got knocked out, but that was, you know, due to the headbutt. So it was kind of a crazy fight. That was his last fight. Before that, he lost to Paddy Pimblett, which should have been a win. So he should be on a 2-fight win streak right now. Instead, he's had a lot of fights in the UFC, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 fights in the UFC. But a big mix of wins and losses. So, you know, he's kind of one of those streaky fighters. But he's 19-6 overall, and it's a lightweight fight against Marco Madsen, who's been pretty impressive in his last fights. He's 12-1 overall. Of course, he lost his last fight by submission against Grant Dawson, but before that, he beat Vince Pichel, Clay Guida, Austin Hubbard. And that was for him. He was on a 4-fight win streak before this last loss, which was a year ago exactly, to Grant Dawson. So he's coming back, ready to get back in the win column. Should be a good fight. And we got another Sarah Longo fighter, Nazim Sadikov versus Vyacheslav Borshev. Fuck, those are tough names, man. But I know how to say Naz's name because I listened to Matt Serra on UFC Unfiltered. So I have a little bit of insight in a lot of his fighters. But Naz has been one of those up-and-comers in his camp for a long time. He's 9-1 overall. This is a lightweight fight. And he's 2-0 in the UFC. And he was in the Contender Series, where he got a win by KO. And then he's coming off a win over a great win actually over Terrence McKinney by submission in the second round back in July of 2020 or this year. So he's on a good win streak. And let's see, Borshev Borshev or Slava. Oh yeah, this is the guy from Team Alpha Male, or Team Alpha they call it now. Slava Claus is what they call him, which is hilarious. But I heard him on a podcast earlier today. He's 7-3 overall, coming off of a win. Before that, he had 2 losses in a row. So he's 2-2 in the UFC, also a Contender Series alum, where he won by KO back in 2021. So both these guys look pretty good. Yeah, I think I'm kind of going for Nas in this one, but Slava Claus sounded like a pretty cool dude as well. The first I had heard from him in that podcast I had heard earlier today. You also got Baby Shark, Tabitha Ricci versus Lupi Godinez. This should be a good one. I'm a big Tabitha Ricci fan. I don't know what it is about her, besides the fact that she's hot. But she's got this like stoic demeanor, and she just looks like she's there to whoop some fucking ass, and she just goes in there and does it. She's 9-1 overall. This is a strawweight fight. She is her only loss is in the UFC to Manon Fiorot, who is a fucking beast, and that was her debut fight. She's undefeated since then. She's 4-0 in her last 4 fights. She beat Poliana Viana, Jessica Penne, and Jillian Robertson in her last 3 fights. A lot of decision wins, but she's a very active fighter, and she's very crisp with those strikes. That last fight against Robertson, I was impressed. That's what made me a fan. Her fight style is fucking entertaining. She just looks like a killer, and like I said, she's easy to look at as well. She's fighting Lupi Godinez, who's 11-3 overall. Let's see, she is coming off, she's on a 3-fight win streak, which is pretty damn impressive because of her opponents: Cynthia Calvillo, Emily Ducote, and Elise Reed. Let's see, her last loss was against Angela Hill, who a lot of people lose to Angela Hill, though. Angela Hill's one of those fighters that she just won in her last fight last week, though. But yeah, Angela Hill's one of those girls that'll win one or lose one, win a couple, then lose one, win one, lose one, stuff like that. You never know what's going to happen when you fight Angela Hill, or what type of fighter she's going to come out as. So no stress on losing to her. You know, it sucks to lose, but that's a tough opponent. Anyway, she's looking to keep her win streak alive and make it 4-0, or 4 in a row. As for now, she's got 3 wins in a row, fighting Tabitha Baby Shark Ricci. That should be a fun one for sure. Now we get to the main card: Diego Lopes versus Pat Sabatini. Diego Lopes is 22-6. He's a great submission fighter. He's a Brazilian, and he's coming off a win over Gavin Tucker back in August. That was an armbar submission, which you're seeing right here, and that was in the first round. Before that, he had a loss by decision, but he had two wins before that outside of the UFC, by TKO and KO. So basically, he's 1-1 in the UFC. Movsar Evloev was who he lost to in his debut fight by unanimous decision. But anytime he wins, he's winning by finish, basically. So, and they're almost all submissions. So you got to watch out for this guy on the ground. Pat Sabatini, though, is a great fighter in his own right. He's 18-4, coming off a submission himself. So this could be a really fun ground fight, a ground game fight. So like, you might see a lot of grappling and jiu-jitsu happening here, but I mean, it's exciting because Lopes is definitely fun to watch on the ground, and Sabatini's done a lot of work on the ground as well, including this last win over Lucas Almeida, submission by arm triangle choke. As you can see in this picture, that's a crazy, who knows what that is. but he's let's see, 18-4. He had a loss to Damon Jackson, that TKO, first round TKO win in September. That was a crazy one. Damon Jackson was on a mission that night. He does have Sabatini does have a lot of decision wins though. But let's see, overall 1, 2, 3, 4. He's 5-1 in the UFC. And yeah, it just looks like he's trying to make his way up against a good up-and-comer in Diego Lopes as well, who's only got 2 fights in the UFC. So that should be a fun one. Moving on, we got another Serra Longo fighter. Now, this is happening because, you know, they're in New York, and Matt Serra and Ray Longo, their fight team is out of, like, New Jersey. So, they're going to have a lot of fighters here in on this card. They always try to get people that are around in that area just to bring in a few more fans, you know, to the fight itself in the venue. But Matt Frevola is 11-3 overall. Big puncher. He's got a lot of power in those hands, and he is coming off actually he's on a 3-fight win streak, all by KO or TKO in the first round. So this might be one of those fights that you want to bet on. Little prop bet, first round, you know, under 1.5, or first round finish, whatever. But Frevola's not a bad person to bet on. Yeah, he's got, you know, a mix of wins and losses, but all of his wins in the last 3 fights have been super impressive. First round finishes, and even his loss to Terrence McKinney was a first round finish. It was like a 7-second KO by Terrence McKinney. So even if he loses, it's exciting over the past couple of years. So he's been calling out people like Paddy Pimblett and shit like that. He's ready to take on big names and prove himself more and more. His last fight was a win by TKO in the first round over Drew Dober. So that's a formidable opponent right there. We all know Drew Dober's a savage. So let's see, his opponent is Benoit Saint-Denis, who is also a pretty good striker in his own right. 12-1 overall. He is also on a 4-fight win streak. He's got 2 submissions and 2 TKO wins in the past 4 fights. So I don't think this fight's going to go all 3 rounds. I would say bet on a finish, regardless of which fighter you're betting on. Might be a little easier to know that Matt Frevola is going to win by KO or TKO. That might be the way to go. I'm betting on Frevola if I were to bet, but I'm saying overall, I'm going with Frevola here. Saint-Denis, lost his debut fight, but has been on a 4-fight win streak since then, beating Ismael Bonfim and Thiago Moises, and nothing has gone past the 2nd round. So not a bad fight to bet on. You got a couple good things to base it off of, and a couple of decent prop bets, I'm sure, if you want to put this in a parlay or just, you know, bet outright. So yeah, that's that. Let's get to the women. Jessica Andrade versus Mackinzie Dern. I'm excited for this fight because I like Mackinzie Dern a lot. I've never been too high on Jessica Andrade. Ever since she dropped Rose on her head, I didn't like her. And that's just personal reasons. Because I like Rose Namajunas a lot, and I've always seen Jessica Andrade as just like a bully type fighter, which is good. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. She was a champ. She's a former champ. She's an exciting fighter. She's got great finishes, whether it be submission or you know, KO TKO wins. She's 24-12 overall, but she is on a 3-fight losing streak, losing to Erin Blanchfield, Yan Xiaonan, and Tatiana Suarez. So This is like a do or die for Jessica Andrade. They might give her extra chances because she is a former champ, but she hasn't. I mean, wait a minute. She fought fucking four. This is going to be her 5th fight this year. Maybe that's the problem, Andrade. Maybe you should fucking chill out on the fighting this year. She won her first fight in January over Lauren Murphy. She lost to Erin Blanchfield in February. She lost to Yan Xiaonan in May. And then she lost to Tatiana Suarez in August. So she is fucking on a goddamn just roll of fighting this year, I guess. She only fought once in 2022. So maybe that's why she's trying to make up for it. But apparently she's in the middle of a divorce right now. She is a lesbian. She's married to a woman. But Mackinzie Dern was talking about her divorce as well to her husband that she has a child with. And I guess they're bonding over this divorce thing. But they're going to beat the shit out of each other like they're each other's significant other. I hope. Because that'll make this a fun fucking fight. The only thing is that Jessica Andrade hits fucking hard. So if she's taking some shit out on Mackinzie Dern, Dern does not have the best defense when it comes to big strikers. But she is a fucking wizard on the ground. She's 13-3 overall. Oh, well, I guess I should have shown Jessica Andrade and her power. That's against I don't know why I just totally lost her name. Who gives a shit? Because she got the shit knocked out of her. Yeah, like I said, Andrade hits hard. So Mackenzie Dern's gonna have to use that ground game. Because she's a great submission artist, with her dad being a, world champion in jiu-jitsu. And, Dern is coming off of a win over Angela Hill back in May by decision. Now, Dern has a lot of decision wins, and she's kind of a back and forth fighter. She lost to Yan Xiaonan before, beat Tisha Torres, lost to Marina Rodriguez, and then won her 4 fights before that against like Nina Nunez, Randa Marcos, Virna Jandiroba. So, it's kind of a win-loss lately for her. And if you keep on that pattern, she's set up to lose. And Andrade has a lot of fucking momentum or motivation to win, considering she's on a 3-fight losing streak, and usually that's not good news for you in the UFC. So this is a tough one. I'm rooting for Dern, but it's going to be tough to beat Andrade in the manner with all the circumstances that are surrounding this fight. We'll see what happens there, though. On to the first title fight, the co-main event. Interim heavyweight championship bout between Sergei Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall. Aspinall has only had 1 fight since he came back from that devastating knee injury against Curtis Blades a while back. And Pavlovich is just a fucking killer. So this is going to be a crazy fight, I think. I feel like it's going to be fun and interesting, and I highly doubt it's going to go all 5 rounds. But you never know. Sometimes these guys nullify each other, and in a fight like this, sometimes they nullify each other and they wind up having a kind of boring fight. But I'm not counting on that with this one. I think this is going to be a banger. We got Sergei Pavlovich, who's 18-1, heavy hands, big striker. I hate even showing this against my boy Tai Tuivasa, but he did wreck him, unfortunately. That was 2 fights ago. It was a KO 54 seconds into the first round. All of Pavlovich's wins are in the fucking first round, including his only loss in the UFC, which was his debut fight in the UFC. He lost to Alistair Overeem by TKO in the first round. Then he went on to have 6 fights in a row that he won by KO or TKO in the first round. 2 minutes and 11 seconds, 1 minute and 6, 4 minutes and 3, 55 seconds, 54 seconds, 3 minutes and 8 seconds. His last win being against Curtis Blades. He beat Curtis Blades, Tai Tuivasa, Derek Lewis, Maurice Green. Like, a lot of fucking big names. He's a fucking killer. This is against Tai Tuivasa, like I said. There's a big punch against Curtis Blades in his last fight. You got the big hook here against Derek Lewis. So, needless to say, Tom Aspinall needs to fucking weather the storm here and make sure he doesn't get hit. And if he does get hit, he damn sure better hope he doesn't get hit flush, or that he can take a damn good punch, unlike all these other guys, these big name guys like Tai Tuivasa, who's usually pretty durable. Derek Lewis does not like getting hit hard and on the button like he did here. So that was obvious as to what was going to happen there. And Curtis Blades is a wrestler type, so when he gets hit, it's a little bit different for him. So you never know. Tom Aspinall is a well-rounded fighter, but can he take a big punch from Sergei Pavlovich? That's the question for this fight. Because like I said, all first round finishes by KO or TKO, whether he won or lost in all of his fights in the UFC. And he's 18-1, with the only loss being against Alistair Overeem. So come on, man. Like, this is another one that might be a foregone conclusion, and you might be able to make some money off of a win here in the first round by KO TKO for Sergei Pavlovich. But Tommy Aspinall is a different kind of opponent. He's been on a tear, you know, except for that injury which happened in last year in July. He came back a year later and beat Marcin Tybura by TKO in the first round. Before the injury, though, he beat Alexander Volkov by submission in the first round as well. Again, a lot of first round finishes here, and they're all finishes. Like, every fight in the UFC for Aspinall has been a first round finish, except for one, which was against Andrei Arlovsky. That was in the second round, and that was a submission win for him. But he's got a couple submission wins in here, as well as, oh, and the rest are all TKO and KO wins, pretty much all in the first round. This is going to be a banger. I feel like if they feel each other out for the first round, come the second round or early in the third, this fight's going to be over. I'm guessing it's not even going to get to the third round, but you never know. So this is the one of his submission wins here, I think, against Volkov. And yeah, I mean, Aspinall is just one of those guys that you just got to know that he's coming out there to win, and to win by a finish. Same with Sergei Pavlovich. It's an exciting fight. We'll see how it goes down. Let's move on to the main event. Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira for the light heavyweight, undisputed light heavyweight championship belt. It's vacant at, well, technically it's not. Technically Jamal Hill is still the champ, but it's a vacant title, really. So they're fighting for the undisputed title, and I feel like this should be a damn good fight as well. So these two fights at the top of this card, man, it should be fucking fun. And if they're not, I'll be extremely disappointed. But I feel like it's going to be a fast night once it gets to these two last fights on this card. Jiri Prochazka, of course, is the former light heavyweight champ. I don't believe he ever... No, he didn't. He never got to defend because he got hurt with that bad shoulder injury. But you know, he's got heavy hands as well. The only problem with Jiri is that he gets hit a lot, and that's one of his bad traits. He gets hit a lot, and if you get hit by Alex Pereira, we've seen what happens. So Jiri, though, is 29-3 overall. His last win was in June of 2022 against Glover, where he won the belt by submission in the 5th round. So that was a crazy fight because him and him and Glover went back and forth. Glover looked really damn good in that fight, but unfortunately at the end, you know, went a little too far with the way he was fighting and wound up getting submitted by rear naked choke with like less than 30 seconds left in the 5th round, where he could have coasted and defended his title. Unfortunately, he dropped it and Jiri got the belt, but hasn't fought since then because of that injury. But yeah, I mean, he's got great punches and great kicks. This was against Dominic Reyes, who was the fight before Glover, which he won by spinning back elbow. Pretty nasty elbow too. He's got some crazy dynamic strikes. He likes to throw everything out there, but like I said, he gets hit a lot, unfortunately. And I think he said something recently about the fact that he actually got knocked out by Dominic Reyes with an up kick, but it was like a flash knockout, and the fight didn't get stopped, obviously, because he wound up winning by KO over Dominic Reyes. And he looked very impressive in that fight. So he's only had 1, 2, 3. So crazy. He's only had 3 fights in the UFC. And in his 3rd fight in the UFC, he wins the heavyweight title. I'm sorry, the light heavyweight title. But he's fought Volkan Ozdemir, Dominic Reyes, and Glover Teixeira. And he's gotten a win in all 3 of those fights by finish. 2 KO wins in the 2nd round, and then the submission over Glover in the 5th. In the past, though, in Ryzen, he fought CB Dalloway, Fabiano Maldonado. So, I mean, he's got a pretty decent background. But yeah, for him to have only have 4 fights in the UFC, 3 fights in the UFC, and is a former champion, I mean, that's a nasty knee right there against Glover. But as you can see, he's all bloodied up as well, because Glover beat him down pretty good. You know, in the end, Jiri got the sub to get the title and then got hurt, unfortunately. So, can he take punches from Alex Pereira, though? That's the tough thing to kind of discern, I guess, because Alex Pereira is a killer, but it's weird because you would think he'd be even heavier hitter in the light heavyweight division, but you know, he went to a split decision win with Jan Blachowicz, and I don't want to say that he didn't look good in that fight, but it wasn't the dominant, impressive fight that he's had in the past when he was in the middleweight division. Now he had a lot of trouble cutting that weight, and obviously he was a bit smaller, but he blows up quick, he rehydrates fast, and he puts the weight on fast. But like, without having all of that kind of an advantage, how's it going to translate over to the light heavyweight division? As we saw against Jan, it was a hard fought win for him. And it didn't look as easy and dominant as it has in the past in the middleweight division against, you know, Sean Strickland, who's the current champ right now. He knocked out easily. And then against the former champ, Israel Adesanya, who he knocked out and shocked the world, even though he came back and lost the title quickly in the rematch. But I mean, as you can see, from November of a year ago, he fought Izzy, won the title, rematched, lost the title, and then gets 1 win in the light heavyweight division and is now fighting for the light heavyweight title. Pretty crazy. I mean, he's only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights in the UFC, and already he's fighting for a 2nd title in his career. But yeah, I mean, that's Alex Pereira. He's a badass. All of his wins are by KO or TKO, except for a couple decisions, which, you know, he still looks impressive in those fights. And yeah, I just don't know. I think he's got a decent chance at knocking out Jiri because Jiri gets hit a lot, like I said, but Jiri is a crazy striker. The different types of strikes that he throws at you it's unpredictable, and he's got just dynamic movements. And Alex is kind of one of those guys who just stands in front and bangs, basically. So if Jiri is smart, he would use some of that grappling that he's known for. He's got good submissions. That's how he won the belt. So he needs to keep that head off the center line and fucking just keep himself from getting hit flush by Alex Pereira, and I think he'll have a good chance of winning. But at this point, I feel like it's kind of a toss-up, so we'll see what happens. But it should be a hell of a fucking night of fights, and in the end, I'm excited for them. I think those last two, the co-main and the main event, the two title fights, are going to be worth the price of that fight. So don't forget, Watch Party Podcast going on during the main event of, the main card of UFC 295. I should have a guest or two here in the studio with me, in the room with me. You know, I hate saying studio. It feels so fake. It's not a studio. But guess what? I got a nice setup now. It feels a little more studio-like. So should be fun. Hopefully everything comes together. Hopefully everything works out. Thanks for tuning in. Come back on Saturday, same channel at 8 p.m. As soon as the main card starts, we will be live. And check out the Watch Party Podcast. Listen to us bullshit and have fun and react to all the fights while you watch the main event. Because, I mean, who really needs to listen to the commentators, right? I mean, it's fun sometimes. But you can always go back and listen to that later. Watch with us. And it should be fun. So Saturday, 8 p.m. during the main card of UFC 295. Tune in here, Going Rounds Podcast YouTube channel. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. You'll know exactly when I go live or when I release any new videos. Don't forget to like and follow all of my social media. It's been going down at the bottom of the screen right there. And if you don't catch the watch party, or even if you do, come back next Thursday, same time, 7 p.m. Arizona time, right here on the YouTube, Going Rounds YouTube channel. And if you like to listen to podcasts only, audio only, you can find me anywhere where you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. So come back next week. Enjoy the fights this weekend. Come and watch the Watch Party Podcast. And yeah, have a good one. That's it for me. I'm out of here. Peace.